Here's my problem, Kweku, with Ange Postecoglou at the minute, right? So he keeps saying, like, we can't be consistent in our lineups and all the rest of it. And I agree with that. He's had loads of injuries. But even with the players he's got fit, he keeps rotating their positions. Sometimes you see Kulusevski on the right, sometimes you see him in the middle. Sometimes you see, Jed Spence playing on one side, then you see him playing on the other. Like, there's inconsistency in what he's doing as well. And when he sits there and says inconsistency is our biggest problem, yes, of course, we can all see that. But I don't have any faith that Ange Postecoglou knows what it's going to take now to kind of get them from inconsistent to consistent. I don't see what the process is. I don't see what the thinking behind it is. And we touched on it earlier in the show. For me, he's in the bottom 5 managers in the Premier League. Genuinely. I genuinely believe that.
I think the problem for him is we all have to acknowledge the injuries, and we have acknowledged the injuries. I think everybody has spoken about it enough. But this is not good enough. And Spurs finished 5th last year. They were in a genuine top 4 race. I think if the season went on for an extra 5 games, they would have caught Villa. Villa looked leggy towards the back end of the season. But you can't go from 5th to finishing in the bottom half of the table. And a lot of Spurs fans pin their hopes on cup competitions because he did say himself he always wins something in his second year. And he was derided for that. But I can understand that if he won a trophy this season, why Spurs fans would really latch onto it and really, really throw their arms around the manager who spoke his truth and he managed to prove it. But it looks like they're going to go out. I think they'll go out of the Europa League, or if they don't go out at this stage, they're not going to win it. Obviously, out of the other cup competitions, it just hasn't been good enough for him. And if he goes out next week at the Europa League, I think he's a dead man walking. And it's never good to get to that situation as a manager, but that's where we're at with him right now because the league campaign is absolutely done. Talking to Alex, one of the producers, and he's lost all heart. He was before, at the beginning of the season, he was telling us about his book that he'd read and about his philosophy. And
Merry Christmas, you Tottenham lemon.
But he is a Tottenham lemon, unfortunately, and these Spurs fans have been beaten in submission, and I feel for them. I understand the protest, right? Because they've been underserved by their owner for the longest, and that is the primary issue for Spurs' downfall. But unfortunately, he's not going to change. And the one variable that you can change is the manager. And if you're saying that there's 15 better managers than him in the Premier League, then you've got to make that change.
Well, I read you a list of managers, didn't we? And we both agreed that there's at least, if not 15, there's at least 14 that we agree are better than Ange Postecoglou in the Premier League. And for a club like Spurs, that shouldn't be tolerated. That shouldn't be accepted. I think he probably does lose his job in the not too distant future. And while I agree that the biggest issue at Tottenham is way above Ange Postecoglou's head, and you need to look at Daniel Levy and you need to look at how they've prioritised business over sort of footballing success, I think all of that is valid. At the same time, lots of previous Tottenham managers have done better than what Ange Postecoglou is doing. Yeah. And they were working under the exact same parameters.
Exactly.
So for that reason, I don't think you can let him get off free. I just don't. If he does lose his job at Tottenham, will he get another Premier League job?
Another Premier League job? Probably not. Because I think he's in the category of manager where he would want to go to a big football club. If a team like Bournemouth were to lose Iraola, would they bring in an Ange Postecoglou? Maybe. I think he's got enough cachet in terms of his work he did at Celtic, but I think the way the season's gone has really damaged his reputation. One thing that I will say for Ange Postecoglou is that you mentioned that previous Spurs managers have had to work within this parameter and have done better than he has. One thing that they...
I know what you're going to say. One thing that they had. Go on.
One thing they had was generational players. Like if you think about Gareth Bale, if you think about Harry Kane, all of those previous managers had those players at their disposal. Spurs don't have a generational player at their disposal at the moment. And so Ange Postecoglou is the first Spurs manager in probably a decade that's had to work without one of those transformative players. Gareth Bale, not single-handedly, but he transformed Spurs in terms of where they are or where they were to where they went. Harry Kane did the same thing, carrying them year after year, scoring 30 goals a season. Ange is the first manager in a long time that hasn't had any of those two players, and he suffered for it. If Harry Kane played for Spurs right now, they wouldn't be where they are right now.
Yeah, but here's my problem with that argument, right? I get it and I understand it, and they've lost a player that is essentially irreplaceable to them, right? Fair enough. But they got, 100 million quid for Harry Kane, there or thereabouts?
Yeah.
And he decided to spend 65 of that on Dominic Solanke.
Yeah.
So for me, okay, he's without a generational talent, if you like, fine. But he had the opportunity to mould the group into the way that he wanted it. Now, I know that Spurs probably didn't spend every penny of the Harry Kane money. And again, that would go back to Daniel Levy, right? I'm not dismissing his role and responsibility in all of this. But you got to choose his successor. And his successor is nowhere near the same level. You've dropped down not just one level for me, you've dropped down 2 or 3 levels if you're comparing Kane and Solanke. And for that price, for that amount of money, you could have gone and got so much more.
Could you? Look at the landscape of football at the moment. You need a striker. We need a striker. Everybody barring City need a striker. Who could they have gone and got that's better than Dominic Solanke?
But the point is, you've spent 65 million quid. You could have bought a 30 million pound striker and a winger for the same money. You could have built out your squad to a much better place, generally speaking. Instead, you looked at Dominic Solanke and went, he's worth 65 million. Let's go and slap that down on him, put all their hopes on him. He can't stay fit, number one.
Yeah.
And, okay, he's a nice build-up player, I think, and you know, he will contribute some goals, but he's never going to be anywhere near Harry Kane levels. He is, for me, a third-tier striker as far as the Premier League's concerned, and that's it.
Yeah, okay, I'll agree with that in terms of body of work, and this is where I would agree with you, actually. Ange's competitive advantage was supposed to be in his ability to go and spot a player. When he was at Celtic, his ability to go and delve into the Asian market and go and bring in players for pennies and turn them into good players that can compete on the European stage, as well as him winning him league titles. He hasn't done that at Spurs, and maybe he's not in control of the recruitment fully, but I do feel for him in terms of Solanke, a player that they did put a lot of eggs in his basket, has been injured. Van der Ven, who's integral to his system, has been injured. But ultimately, that falls at the door of the manager. And if you're not getting results, the manager has to go, and he has to go. Elsewhere,
Joshua Zirkzee scored his first European goal for Manchester United as they drew 1-1 away to Real Sociedad in the last 16 of the Europa League. And their manager, Ruben Amorim, says the result is something they can build on ahead of the second leg.
Yeah, could be better, but could be worse, because in the last 20 minutes I felt the team really tired. But until the penalty, I felt that the team was in control of the game. After the goal, we were so near the second goal with transitions. You felt in the stadium they were nervous, but in the end, the penalty, I think, did change a little bit. And then when the momentum changed, we get tired more easily. We take the game to Old Trafford and we'll try to win that.
I think all things considered, when you look at where Manchester United are at generally right now, that was a decent result. Fair, or do you think the performance was cause for concern again?
The performance was cause for concern. They're just not good enough, man. And I don't see this Amorim situation ending well. I think he is the kind of manager that could potentially walk. I look at the structure of Manchester United, and Ineos were hailed when they came in as these people that are going to transform the football club, bringing in actual footballing people for the first time in a long time at Manchester United. But go and ask Nice fans what they think about Ineos as owners of football clubs. I know that it's a change from the Glazers who were running that football club into the ground financially, but it doesn't mean that their replacements are going to be by default good at their jobs. I think there are levels to running a football club. You've seen it in the Premier League. And I think that Amorim is working against the tide. He's swimming against the tide. And I think it's a very difficult job. He's put in a difficult position. And part of the issue with Manchester United is that they are Manchester United. Every week it seems like they're on at 4:30. Every week a legend is talking about how poor they are, whether that's Wayne Rooney, Roy Keane, Rio Ferdinand, Gary Neville. They're all on TV. They're all on YouTube talking about how bad Man United are, and he's having to fight against it. So on the result is the result. We all know Man United aren't going to win the Europa League. They can draw away at Sociedad. They can go through in the second leg, but they're not good enough to win this competition. I think that by the time this time next season, Amorim won't be the Manchester United manager. That's my claim.
I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. And I think you're right to say he feels like he's the kind of character that would just go, I can't do this.
Yeah.
It's not working. It's not happening.
And he can walk away with his, not his legacy, but his perception intact if he walks away.
This is the thing as well, because he's come in and he's not really had any backing. Who's he got in? Dorgu?
Yeah.
Like, he's literally got Dorgu and that's it, right? And then come the summer, they're going to be in a position, you know it, where they have to sell to buy. And what that means, and I've seen it with loads of other clubs in the past, is that you go into the window in a position of disadvantage. Teams want to move for your players, but believe that if they leave it till the latter stages of the window, they'll get a better deal. And you end up in this limbo for the first couple of months of the summer where you're just sitting there going, will someone please come and buy one of our players so that we can release some funds? And so then if they go into the new season even, having failed to back him in the way that he needs to turn the team's fortunes around, then who would blame Ruben Amorim from going, I'm done? And if he does walk away, his, as you say, status remains intact because it will be clear for everybody to see that he didn't get what he needed in order to try and turn the ship around.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a really tough situation for him. I never thought I'd ever say this, but I do feel for the Man United manager.
You feeling all right, mate?
Yeah, I need to check my temperature.
On DAB via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.